The Seekonk poltergeist. When adolescent energy became dangerous, a Massachusetts family lived in violent chaos for 4 months, until the Warrens discovered the teenagers were fueling the entity themselves. Seekonk, Massachusetts occupies a quiet stretch of land just across the Rhode Island border, the kind of suburban terrain that exists primarily as a corridor between larger destinations. In the summer of 1975, this unremarkable town becomes the site of a poltergeist investigation that will reshape how Ed and Lorraine Warren approach an entire category of paranormal phenomena. The case challenges their methodology, tests their theories about adolescent psychic energy, and ultimately teaches them that some hauntings require not just spiritual intervention, but psychological understanding. What happens in the Fontaine family home over 4 months of escalating terror represents a collision between genuine supernatural activity and the volatile emotional world of adolescence, a combination that proves more dangerous than either force alone. The Fontaine family contacts the Warrens through an unusual channel. A local priest has already visited their home twice, and both times he leaves convinced that what he witnesses exceeds the boundaries of pastoral counseling. This priest knows enough about the Warrens' work to understand that what the Fontaines are experiencing requires specialized expertise. When Ed and Lorraine Warren arrive in July, they find Robert and Patricia Fontaine exhausted and frightened, their 4 children ranging from 7 to 16 years old, and a household teetering on the edge of psychological collapse. The family has endured 4 months of phenomena that has progressed from unsettling to violent, and they no longer feel safe in their own home. The activity, the Warrens quickly determine, centers on 2 of the 4 Fontaine children. Diane, 13 years old, and her brother Paul, 11, occupy the eye of a paranormal storm that radiates outward to affect every room in the house. This pattern is familiar to the Warrens. Poltergeist cases often focus on adolescents, particularly those in the early stages of puberty, and the phenomena tends to mirror the emotional volatility of its focal points. But familiarity does not diminish the intensity of what is occurring in Seekonk. The Fontaines describe kitchen utensils flying across rooms without being touched, traveling in straight trajectories that defy gravity. A dining room chair moves 6 feet across the floor while the entire family watches, its movement slow and deliberate, as if invisible hands are pushing it from behind. The object does not slide or topple. It travels purposefully, and when it stops cleanly. Robert Fontaine returns home from work one evening to discover that every framed photograph in the house has been turned to face the wall. Not some of them, all of them. The photographs on the mantel, the ones hanging in the hallway, the family portrait above the sofa, the school pictures on the bedroom dressers. Someone or something has moved through the house systematically, reversing every image. The children are questioned, all 4 deny involvement. Patricia Fontaine, who has been home all day, heard nothing. The house was silent. The photographs simply turned while no one was looking. Diane Fontaine is found in her bedroom on 2 separate occasions in a state that her parents describe as trance-like. She sits upright on her bed, eyes open but unfocused, and when she speaks, the voice that emerges is not her own. It is lower than a 13-year-old girl's voice should be, steady and controlled, and it addresses Robert and Patricia by their first names. The voice makes references to events that occurred before Diane was born, specific details about the early years of their marriage that their daughter should have no way of knowing. On both occasions, Diane has no memory of what she said when she emerges from the trance. She remembers sitting on her bed, and then she remembers her parents shaking her awake, their faces pale with fear. Paul begins sleepwalking nightly. His parents hear him moving through the house in the early hours of the morning, and when they follow him, they discover he is always moving toward the same destination, the basement door. He stands in front of it, hand outstretched toward the knob, not quite touching it. When his parents wake him, he is confused and frightened. He does not remember leaving his bed. He does not know why he is standing at the basement door. The pattern repeats night after night, and the Fontaines begin locking Paul's bedroom door from the outside, a measure that fills them with guilt but feels necessary. Even locked in his room, Paul is found standing at his own door in the morning, still asleep, hand reaching for a knob he cannot turn. Lorraine Warren enters the Fontaine home and immediately perceives what she describes as a pressurized energy, volatile and dense. This sensation is not unfamiliar to her. She has encountered it before in cases involving adolescents, a specific quality of psychic turbulence that feels different from demonic presence or residual haunting. It is alive in a way that other hauntings are not, reactive and emotionally charged. Lorraine sits down with the family and explains her theory carefully. Poltergeist activity, in her experience, is rarely purely supernatural in origin. It often represents a combination of genuine paranormal phenomena and the amplifying effect of adolescent emotional energy. This does not mean the activity is fabricated or imagined. It means that Diane and Paul are both victims and unwitting participants. They're developing psychic sensitivity, making them focal points for something that is using their energy as fuel. This framework is crucial to how the Warrens approach the case. They do not dismiss the phenomena as psychological projection. The objects that move are real. The voice that speaks through Diane is documented. The danger is measurable. But they also recognize that the emotional state of the children is not incidental to the haunting. It is integral. Adolescence is a period of intense psychological and hormonal upheaval, and in rare cases, that upheaval manifests outwardly in ways that defy physical explanation. Ed Warren interviews Diane and Paul separately, at length, asking them about their feelings, their fears, their relationships with their parents and siblings. He is looking for patterns, for sources of stress or anger that might be feeding the activity. The most dangerous incident occurs before the Warrens are called, during the 6th week of the phenomena. Robert Fontaine stands in the kitchen, discussing dinner plans with his wife, when a cast iron pan comes off its hook on the far wall. The pan does not fall. It moves horizontally, at speed, crossing the length of the kitchen and striking Robert across the shoulder with enough force to bruise the bone. Patricia witnesses the entire event. There is no mistaking what happens. The pan travels through the air in a straight line, propelled by something invisible, and makes contact with deliberate accuracy. Robert is left shaken and in pain, the bruise spreading across his shoulder and upper back in the days that follow. By the time the Warrens arrive, the activity has reached a frequency and intensity that Ed Warren considers genuinely hazardous. He does not believe a demonic entity is present, but he argues that this distinction is less important than the family assumes. An unchecked poltergeist of this magnitude, sustained over months and still escalating, is fully capable of causing serious physical harm regardless of its ultimate origin. Diane and Paul are in danger. Their siblings are in danger. The Warrens treat the case with the same urgency they bring to demonic investigations, understanding that the threat is real even if the source is complex. Ed and Lorraine Warren work closely with the family priest to perform a blessing of the home. The blessing is not a full exorcism, but a targeted spiritual intervention, focused specifically on the areas of highest activity: the kitchen, where the cast iron pan attacked Robert; Diane's bedroom, where she has entered trance states; and the basement door, where Paul walks in his sleep. The blessing is conducted with intention and precision, invoking protection and seeking to disrupt the energetic patterns that have taken root in the house. Simultaneously, the Warrens work directly with Diane and Paul. This is the component of the investigation that sets the Seekonk case apart. Ed and Lorraine sit down with the teenagers and explain, in clear and respectful terms, that their own emotional states are connected to what is happening in the house. They are not being blamed, they are not at fault, but their anger, their fear, their stress, these emotions are feeding the activity, amplifying it, giving it strength. The Warrens teach Diane and Paul techniques for managing their emotional responses, for recognizing when they feel the pressure building and consciously working to reduce it. This approach treats the adolescent focal points as participants in the resolution rather than just victims of the phenomena, and it represents a methodology the Warrens have developed through years of poltergeist investigation. The results are not immediate, but they are measurable. Within 2 weeks of the blessing and the work with the children, the activity begins to diminish. The objects stop flying, the photographs stay in place, Diane does not enter another trance. Paul's sleepwalking becomes less frequent and then stops entirely. By early September, the phenomena ceases completely. The Fontaine home returns to silence, a normal suburban house occupied by a family that has survived something extraordinary. The Seekonk poltergeist becomes one of the Warrens' primary teaching cases on adolescent-centered poltergeist activity. Ed Warren argues consistently that these cases require a dual response: spiritual intervention for the environmental component and direct engagement with the adolescent focal points to address the psychic amplification. Lorraine Warren maintains contact with Diane Fontaine for several years after the investigation, monitoring her development and offering guidance. Diane, Lorraine reports, shows genuine psychic sensitivity that persists into adulthood. She does not lose this ability as she matures. Instead, she learns to manage it, to understand it, to live with it without fear. She goes on to lead a normal life, marries, has children of her own. The summer of 1975 in Seekonk remains the strangest chapter of an otherwise ordinary story, a moment when the boundaries between the psychological and the supernatural collapsed entirely, and a teenage girl became a doorway for forces she did not understand. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.